So Dorsol, I'm going to have a few kind of specific questions that give us a sense of your Puget Sound politics, what issues you supported in the past, and then we have some creative questions where we really hope to hear from you some specifics on what you plan to accomplish for each of the questions.
Okay.
So to start with, did you support the Parks Levy and did you support the 2008 Sound Transit expansion measure?
I did support the Parks Levy. I, however, did not support the Sound Transit measure.
Okay, thanks. So right now there's a popular, controversial topic, and that's the repealing the head tax. Do you support that? So why? If not, why?
It's actually an interesting question because right now in my own steering committee, we're kind of going back and forth on it. Initially, when I came out and first got into the race, I started introducing myself to business because I had been so involved in a lot of the nonprofits in the area, and consistently what I kept hearing from the nonprofits was, for the businesses, was the head tax is killing us, head tax is preventing small businesses from coming in. And then when I talked to a couple of the employees, they're like, well, I walk to work, but I still they pay the head tax on me because they can't negotiate the form. But now we're looking at it, right now obviously the repeal of the head tax it's political. It's been something businesses have been asking for several years now. And frankly, I think it's a good example of part of the problem that we have in the city government. To get back to actually whether or not I would support repealing it, I said first, starting in the beginning part of my campaign, but I'm a human being, and as I'm going, I'm learning, and what I'm hearing and seeing is that the head tax isn't exactly the hassle that it is, and in fact we need to focus more on the square footage tax with our businesses to clean that up more. I'm in a transition. It's fair. It's difficult for me to say because when I first started this race, I came out and I said we need to repeal the head tax because what I was being told was that it was hurting businesses. Now what I'm hearing is it's not hurting businesses, that the tax could work. It's just like the square footage tax. The paperwork involved with it, getting people to actually start using the exemptions is the fault. And if we can go through and we can fix that portion, if we can make the form understandable, and if we can get businesses to actually take advantage of the exemption, then the head tax will be serving its purpose, and then it should stay.
So right now the pedestrian master plan has about 1% of its projects being funded. How would you, this head tax could be $4 million of lost funding for transportation, from the transportation budget. What funding mechanisms would you help to expand funding for the pedestrian master plan?
Well, one of the first things that I would do is I'd prioritize pedestrianism. It's a mode of transportation, and I felt that it's still being looked at as it's a good, healthy, environmental thing to do, but it's not really a useful means of transportation. That's one of the things I'd like to see. Bikes and walking are viable means of transportation, it's just we're not encouraging them. If the head tax is repealed, I think there's a couple of different areas that we can find money to come from. The city council right now has actually come out and said that they've already found means to put any money back in that we lose from repealing the head tax. But one of the things that I've talked a lot about that I'd like to do is I'd like to conduct a traffic study to determine whether or not some of the traffic solutions that London and Singapore has used, a congestion charge, would work here in Seattle. Right now, frankly, during rush hours, we shut down portions of 3rd Avenue anyways. Would we benefit from potentially shutting down other areas of the city, charging anything that was not an alternative energy vehicle or a more environmental means of transportation like walking or biking a charge, and then using that money to immediately plug it back into sidewalks, to plug it back into the roads, and just plug it back into the transportation. So I'd really like to see us conduct a traffic study there.
And so a follow-up question for that would be, do you support corridor tolling?
It has to be done right. You can't just, I imagine this question has probably come up because of I-90 and 520. And if you toll one of them, then you're going to just be clogged. You're not going to be affecting traffic flow whatsoever. If corridor tolling can be done right, if it can be done effectively, and it actually serves the purpose that it's intended to serve, then I would support it.
Because there's even talk of like I-5 in the future and things like that. And it might be a scenario where the state legislature gives authority to the local government to impose a toll. What do you think about I-5?
Well, I didn't grow up in Seattle. I grew up in West Virginia, and we use toll roads quite a bit. And one of the things that they discovered really quickly that they had to do on I-77 was people were getting off more and more on a certain exit. And they figured out it was because there was this little back road, 20 minutes you could go around the toll booth and not have to pay it. So they ended up actually having to take and put a toll booth down on this little side road that you paid $0.25 to go through because of that. We would really have to look at tolling I-5 specifically with what we are or not doing with the viaduct and the bore tunnel, because we're already looking at backing up traffic on I-5 for several years from now. And with growing people, if we did do it, we'd have to do it very carefully. But if it was necessary to properly toll 520 and I-90, then we should definitely look into doing it right.